Welcome back. API gateways. An API gateway is a crucial component in modern microservices architecture and distributed systems. It serves as a single entry point for client requests, routing them to the appropriate backend services. The API gateway abstracts and manages the interactions between clients and microservices, providing features such as authentication, load balancing, rate limiting, logging, and monitoring. So let's look how API gateways work in practice, and after that, let's talk about why do we need them and how the flow is working. So let's just take a shape here, and we say this will be the client. Let's make it white and here white, and make this quite bigger. And the client will communicate with an get, API gateway. I'd like to make this white as well. And the API gateway will route the requests to the API service in our microservice architecture. So let's say that we have service one. Also, we want to have service two. That's just, yeah. And we want to have service three. So we have three services right now. So what will we get from using the API gateway in the system? First, we have a single entry point, because the API gateway provides an undefined endpoint for clients to interact with the backend service, which is simplifying the client side logic. So the client side doesn't have to know the API address of each service to communicate with. It's only need to know the API address for the API gateway, and the API gateway will make the communication for the client. So it simplifies the request and the client project. Second, security. It handles authentication and authorization, ensuring that only authenticated and authorized users can access. The second thing, also load balancing. API gateways distribute incoming requests across multiple instances of backend of backend services to ensure high availability and scalability. So let's say that this service is actually it's on multiple nodes. So the API gateway will also not also redirect the requests to the service one. It also will make sure that it sends the request to the right service or the right node. So it also balance the load that coming from the client. Second thing, also fourth thing, rate limiting. So it protects backend services from being overwhelmed by limiting the number of requests a client can make in a given period. The fifth is the protocol translation. So it converts between different protocols like HTTP, WebSocket, REST, etc., to ensure compatibility between clients and services. And sixth is caching, also because it reduces a load back-end services by caching responses to frequent requests, and also logging and monitoring. It tracks request and response, providing insights into system performance and user behavior. So let's talk about how this works in action. So the client will send the request to the API gateway. The API gateway the API gateway handles multiple things. First, it's handle authentication. So the API gateway first will authenticate the user. Okay. After authenticating the user, it will provide. It's also send the API gateway will checks if the client has exceeded the allowed number of requests. It will do a rate limiting. Okay. Um, after doing the rate limiting, the client the API gateway will check. The API gateway will check if the request data is already cached. If the data is actually cached, it returns the response directly from the cache. If the data is not cached, the API gateway will forward the request to the appropriate backend service to cache. So also it's do cache, it's handle cache. Number 5, it will request routing. So the API gateway will route the request to the correct backend microservice based on the URL path and method. So for example, it will send a request to service 1. After that, it will respond. The API gateway received a response from the service back to it. And after that, the response may be cached if applicable, and then it is sent back to the client if the client needed. Also, we have logging and monitoring, because the API gateway logs the request and the response details for monitoring and analysis purposes. And yeah, this is how the API gateway works in action. And it's important to know how API gateway works, because we will try to build we have in the upcoming videos, we will have a system design for WhatsApp, and in WhatsApp we'll use API gateways a lot. So yeah, that's it for this video, and see you in the future.